Well, good morning. So good to be here. The first Sunday of November. Can you believe it? We're finishing up this exploration that we've had that's based on the 10 prophetic justice principles by Reverend James Forbes. And what's so beautiful for us as we've been working through this is how powerful it is when we ground ourselves in the truth of our teaching, how we can't help but act out in the world. We can't help but be in a place of prophetic justice for the world. And so I've just been really touched by this whole series, and today we're talking about spiritually motivated moral leadership. I was listening to a talk on YouTube from Reverend James Forbes. If you ever get a chance to, he's really a delightful and powerful speaker. And he was sharing a story about his friend who was also a minister. And the friend was sharing a story about when he was a little boy, he used to pretend to play church. Kind of sounds familiar, right? Because I used to do that too. And so he would, all his friends would get together and they would play church and they would take turns. They would, direct the choir and they would take turns sharing their speaking skills. And he said one day, as it was his turn to speak up and to be the preacher, he said he just got filled, in his words, with like the Holy Spirit. I mean, he just really got it. And he started really exclaiming, and he was preaching, and he was yelling, and he was proclaiming, and he just was like so caught up in it. And his friends were like, whoa, you know, we're just playing. And he said, I'm not playing, y'all. I'm not playing. This is a true experience. This is an expression. This is real for me. And I love that story because it's true that we're not playing. You know, this is a really, come on in, come join us. Yes. Let's make some space for, that's fine. Come and join us. Find you some space. There's a space right back there. So we are, we live in serious times, right? We've got a lot of crazy stuff going on. Come on in. And so we can get kind of caught up in this world of effects and the drama and the trauma and the things that are happening. And yet what we have to remember is that we have this divine truth within us that can express as us to be a place of good, to be of action in the world. And so part of that way is to provide spiritually motivated moral leadership. And so we're going to talk about that. And right away I want to talk about what a leader is, because there might be people here that are thinking, well, this talk doesn't pertain to me. I'm not the minister, I'm not a practitioner, I'm not a boss at my work, I'm not, but what we have to remember is that we all can be in a place of leadership in our life through our work, through our example with our children, with our friends, in our spiritual community, that we can become a leader just by our mere example and the practice of our principles. There's a story about a couple of monks that decided they were going to go to a distant town because they'd heard that there was this really powerful spiritual leader named Brother Joseph, and they wanted to go learn from him. And so they started out on their path, and along the way, they kind of, were getting on each other's nerves. A couple of them were not pulling their weight with the chores, and they were just kind of irritated. And along the way, another monk who was going in that same directive joined them. And when they started bickering, this monk would say, you know what, that's okay, I'll take care of that. And he started complimenting them and being grateful for what he was, and that he was able to go along with them. And what happened is this kind of rubbed off on them, and they started being nice to each other, and they started being more responsible. They started stepping up. And when they finally got to the monastery, and they knocked on the door, and the monk came to the door, and they said, we're here to sit at the feet and learn from Brother Joseph, the great spiritual leader. And the monk laughs, and he says, well, he's among you. That's Brother Joseph that's been walking with you. And just by his leadership was just in being an example of who he is. And so we have that opportunity too, because we have such powerful principles that we can bring forth and use in our life. And so let's talk about then what morality is. So if we're talking about spiritually motivated moral leadership, so what is morality? And this can be It can be a trigger word, right, for some of us who may have come from a strict religious background, who might have had judgment about their actions or who they are, what's being called immoral. And so we can have some triggers about this, but in science of mind, morality is not guilt-based. Darn. Make my job a whole lot easier if it were. It's not rooted in some rigid set of rules. Rather, it's a heartfelt alignment with our true nature of divinity and respect for the divinity in others. Our moral code is in our vision statement, right? That is a moral code. To awaken our inherent oneness with divine source, to know that about ourselves, to awaken to our oneness with our planet and with each other, and then act. That act, knowing that oneness matter, is our moral code. That is basically it. To act as though we know and believe that we are one with the divine and with each other. So when we think about this, when we get in positions of leadership or we get into positions of having to make decisions about things that we do, the question that I like to ask myself is, do I believe the truth with a capital T about myself? Whenever I have an action that might entail some moral decision making, and it happens all the time. Have you ever been at a grocery store and they gave you too much cash back, and there's that moment, woohoo, I got a windfall. But then if we ask ourselves, do I believe the spiritual truth about myself? Do I believe the truth about myself? Do I believe what we teach, that I am a divine being, an expression of God, that is abundantly cared for, that there's abundance in the universe, that there's, that this part of me makes it so that I don't have to be immoral anyway. I don't have to cheat or to lie or to get something. And so we joyfully in that moment bless that money and give it back, here. And again, in that moment, we're in a place of moral leadership. We are sharing an example. This is how it is. I have done that. I can't tell you how many times my children have seen me do something like that. And to know that they're watching. They're watching how we act and who we are. And it's because I want to believe this truth about myself and act from that place. There's a truth about being a moral, spiritually motivated moral leader that we might think that means we have to be perfect. We have to be perfect all the time. We can't make mistakes. We always have to have the higher ground. And the truth is, no, we don't. Thank God. If you know me long enough, you know that I'm a great example of not making mistakes. And recently I had a wonderful example of that. I sit on the Ministers' Council for Centers for Spiritual Living, and we are dealing with this ethics issue. And I read the ethics policy, and I decided that I knew exactly what we were going to do. And I kind of got on more high horse. I motivated the whole group, so we're going to write this letter, and we're going to do this. And and they said, yes, let's do it, and we're behind you. And we wrote this letter, and the letter I get back says, you're reading the wrong policies and procedures manual. There's an updated edition that doesn't have that clarification in it. And I was sitting at my desk, and I felt this tremendous shame. I felt embarrassed. I had misled my colleagues. I had been a little too boastful. And I just felt like the shame. And in that moment, and I have to say, I started making up excuses. Well, there should have been an updated version of the policy and procedures manual on the website. And really, they should have read that policy. Why did they depend on me? I started, and then I caught myself, and I thought, do I believe the spiritual truth about myself? Do I believe that I'm lovable, even when I make mistakes? Do I believe that I can be honest and truthful in this moment because I'm a divine expression of God? And I was able to apologize and to share my embarrassment, to share, how sorry I was that I had kind of put us in this position, and I went on. And you know what the beautiful thing is that which we put out in the world comes back to us. It reflects back to us. And what do you think I got back? I got love. I got forgiveness. I got support and encouragement. So we all have an opportunity to be that example of moral leadership, even in those moments when we are not being our best. Dr. Ernest Holmes said, "The temporal imperfections of the human cannot dim the eternal integrity of the divine." Let's take that in. The temporal imperfection, the way we show up in human form, the way we can make mistakes, the way we can totally forget who we are, cannot dim the eternal integrity of the divine. That integrity is within us. It doesn't leave us. We don't have to do anything to get it. We don't have to be anything. All we have to do is acknowledge it. Is to recognize it. To believe it. So we're not playing, y'all. We're not playing. This is powerful stuff. Sometimes we think that, there are people that think we're just these positive thinkers, but we are sharing deep, eternal, powerful truths of who we are. And the test of our morality is whether we are in integrity with this divine truth of ourselves, and whether we know it and are motivated by those truths out in our world. Which turns us to that sense of what is spiritually motivated. What is our action out in the world? Some of our teachers and people that espouse our teachings often say that we're not meant to be active in the world, that that's not our role, that's not our job, that we're only supposed to be able to align with our divine truth about ourselves, and then everything else will be okay. So I think that that's a misreading of our teachings, because I think that we can't help but be active if we actually know this truth. And it's not true in our history. I was reading the book New Thought Revolution by Harv Bishop and Mitch Horowitz, and they talk about this. They said some of the most dynamic figures in the positive thinking tradition, in our tradition, were social radicals who believed the mind power methods that could help empower workers and women and immigrants and minorities. They included suffragettes like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, black nationalists like Marcus Garvey, motivational hero Albert Hubbard, who led crusades against child labor, and Arthur Wallace Wattles, who wrote the book The Science of Getting Rich, and was the basis of the movie The Secret. And while he wrote that book, The Science of Getting Rich, he was running for Congress on the Socialist Party ticket, and a publisher and a voting rights activist. And so this idea that it's self-centered, that it's about what we get, it's about, he's talking about these spiritual truths that we can use and apply in our life. And if we're coming from a place of morality, we know that it's good for others as well, that others can benefit as well, that there's enough for us, there's enough to go around. So this idea that it's not part of our history or our lineage, or that we're not able to stand up for social action is not an accurate understanding of our truth. And it can be easy for us to misunderstand our teachings. I know when I was very early on in my education and understanding of these principles, there I had a wonderful teacher. His name was Dr. Larry Morris. He was a divine science minister, which is an off-branch of one of the New Thought, under the umbrella of New Thought. He's a wonderful speaker, a really beautiful man. He died a couple years ago. But I remember, in those early classes, and if you remember your early classes, or maybe still, there's that question of well, if thought creates everything, what about the starving children in other countries? what did they create this with their thought? This question of if this is true, what could an innocent child have done to bring this upon themselves? And it's a powerful question, right? And he said, he said in this moment, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the consciousness of anybody else in the world or where the circumstances. All I know is that I'm responsible for my thoughts. I'm responsible for who I am. I'm responsible for how this works for me. And that is a powerful truth. And I thought it was a powerful truth. And it brings up an idea of not being judgmental. Because what do we do sometimes when other people are having challenges? We think that, right? Oh, just talking negatively. I heard them say the other day they don't feel supported. No wonder their back went out. There's those that we can do that. And what that does is it numbs us. Right? It separates us. It makes it where we don't have to feel for the challenges that are going on in the world. And I think that can create this sense of separation, right? It creates a separation of what is truly true for us. Mitch Horowitz said about this very thing about non-judgment, which is a valid truth. He said, he says, I offer this one thing: avoid analyzing the suffering of others. The greatest empirical insight we possess on the spiritual path is inner experience. It is enough to understand your own suffering, which will hold universal lessons. But I do no good if I talk at my neighbor and say, well, this is why he's going through this. If a person has never experienced war or cancer or loss of a child, they may never know what is going on. And that's a truth for us. If we're spiritually motivated moral leaders, we don't allow ourselves to judge whatever somebody else is going through. But we can't let that truth keep us from acting, keep us from turning away, keep us from numbing. Dr. Holmes said very, very clearly in his writings that is not what we do. He said in Living the Science of Mind, he said, in the science of mind, we do not say everything is all right when it is all wrong. We do not say peace when there is no peace. But whether we try to discover what is wrong and why we do not have peace, we do not say that people are not poor or sick or unhappy. We ask why these things should be if the original cause of all things is harmonious, perfect, radiant, and happy. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on and he says, in the practice of spiritual mind healing, we do not deny that people are ill, nor do we minimize the need for sanitation or medical or surgical help. We seek to aid these other agencies by uniting with them in their effort, by being grateful for their health, by cooperating in every way possible with what they are doing. We can apply these truths that he was speaking about back in 1926 when he wrote this, and we can apply these to our current day challenges around racial issues, around gun violence, around climate change, around immigration issues, inhumane experiences. We can, instead of turning away or judging that, we can lift up those who feel powerfully inclined to be in action. We can support and lift up those who are working for change in our world. We can act, we can vote, we can share our word in order to be of action, to be of moral leadership in our world. And he doesn't even go on there, finish there. He says, those who engage in this practice must have a deep desire and willingness to sympathize with the person who suffers. There is no place in this practice for arrogance or the holier-than-thou attitude. The great have always been humble. The great have always been kind. The great have always been lovers of humanity. And we have right there the qualities of a spiritually motivated moral leader: to be humble, to be kind, to be great lovers of humanity. And if we are that way, we know that we're not playing, that we are actively involved. And we bring that human nature into our work. It's so easy for us sometimes to just assume that whatever's going on out there, that we don't we don't affect it, or it's not ours to do. Pema Chodron, the Buddhist teacher, talks about 3 types of people in our lives. There's the people we love, that we like, that we enjoy being around. The people that we don't like, that we don't enjoy being around, or that we even might hate. But there's a third aspect. There's those that we're indifferent to. The indifference. We don't see them. We don't know them. We drive to work and we don't look at faces. And so to be a spiritually motivated moral leader, we have to put a face on it, right? We have to make the people that are affected by our decisions, by who we are real, honest-to-goodness people. There's a story about a man who was talking about this. He was a IT professional. His name was Dan, and he said that he made this obvious that this was a kind of an overlooked point sometime, that it's easy to engage in unethical or immoral behavior when you don't have to see the person whom you're affecting. Accordingly, he says, try to put a face with a name, finding photos of people he interacts with on LinkedIn or on the social media or other online directory. He says, associating a face with the interactions reminds me that my actions affect a real person, not just some faceless name and an email address line. We all have this, not just this opportunity, but this calling, this imperative that we each stand up to be that spiritually motivated moral leader. And just like we have been going over these justice principles, that when we come from that knowingness of who we are and that truth of who we are, and that inherent divine perfection and goodness is who we are and how that shows up in our world, we can't help but act in a moral and loving way. We can't help, as we have been studying these 10 principles, to seek the common good, what is good for all, to be truthful in our facts and motives, to promote unity and inclusion, to care for the poor and protect the vulnerable and guard freedom of thought and discussion, to respect other peoples, other nations, to ensure stewardship of creation, to cherish the human family and cherish all life, and to provide spiritually motivated moral leadership. William James said that the ultimate test of any ethical or spiritual philosophy is its effect on conduct. The test of our spiritual truth is not the inner awareness of figuring out who we are. It's on how we take that out in the world. It's on our conduct out in the world. So we're not playing, y'all. And this reminder that the temporal imperfections of the human cannot dim the internal integrity of the divine. Do we believe this truth about ourselves? And if so, we can't help. We cannot help but be spiritually motivated moral leaders. Let's take this truth into our practice, in our spiritual practice. You just close your eyes, if you so choose. And let us just take a moment. You know, spiritual practice is such a powerful thing, and community spiritual practice is so powerful, and how we come together energetically is such a unique experience, and we include those who are online watching us today, but also just notice the energy in this room. And so let us just take a nice deep breath in. And I'd like you just to notice your physical being. Sometimes we stop at the head in our philosophy because it's called science of mind, but the name is actually science of mind and spirit. And so let us just allow ourselves to just note where we are physically in this moment. Just scan through that body temple of yours. Notice any tightness or tension or pain, or where you might be relaxed. Notice what areas feel more accessible than not. And there's nothing you need to do about this. There's no judgment, there's no action. It's just awareness. It's just simply awareness. We talk about expanding our perception. This is part of it, expanding our perception of our physical body. now just move into that mind, your brain, the physical brain, and your mind with all those thoughts. And once again, just notice, what are you thinking? What's the quality of your thought? Do you feel centered and balanced in your thinking? Is it busy or distracted? Again, no judgment, nothing to do with it, just noticing. And then just call forth what emotions you might be feeling in this moment. Just name them. Sometimes we don't even name what emotions we're feeling. At every single moment, we're feeling an emotion. What is the one that you're feeling in this moment? And where does it reside in your body? Our emotions show up in our body through the tightness in our shoulders, or the clenching of the jaw, or the expanded joy in our heart, or in our tummy, or excitement. Our body tells us what's going on. And then after this little practice, just notice your whole being. Does it feel more calm, more centered? Do you feel more aware? And then let's bring our breath to the center of our being and call forth a quality of spiritually motivated moral leadership that you choose in this week to embody, that you choose to bring forth into the world, because you know that no matter your action, no matter the mistakes, that there is a divine essence within you that cannot be challenged, cannot go away. And it's from that place that you bring forth this quality. And just allow to fill up your whole being. And as it does, you notice that it can't be contained by your being, that it spills out into this room. You can just visualize it. Maybe it's like a drop of water in a still pond, and it ripples out into this room, and you can feel it as it touches the people behind you and in front of you and next to you, people that you love, maybe people you don't know too well, whatever. Just allow it to fill this room up. And if you are sitting here today and you're thinking, I don't have a quality, I don't know, allow yourselves to soak up the love in this room, in this moment, through this ripple, this energetic ripple. And let us expand this awareness, this divine truth of who we are in this room, who we are online, and go above this building and bless this beautiful campus and all the good work that they do throughout the week. Let us bless the city of Leesburg or Knatsburg and bless all of those that make this their home, and find your home in there, and bless who live there and abide there. And let us just expand this awareness to the state of Virginia. And on Tuesday, there are elections taking place. And we just know that we all do our part in our moral leadership, and we cast those votes, and we know that those who are elected are the highest quality of moral leadership, and they are doing the highest and best for our state and our country and our world. And we know that the neighboring states, if you come from a neighboring state, that is the same truth. And let us just focus on our capital. It's so close to us, and we have such power to know the truth of the leadership that is there, that the highest and best is unfolding, that there is a goodness within each of our leaders, and that breaks through forth in the most powerful, beautiful way for the highest and best of all of us. Let us expand to the United States, to all of North America, South America, Central America, expanding it around this world, just lighting up this beautiful globe. How powerful it is for us to use this energetic knowing to lift up those that may need it in this moment. We don't turn away, we don't look away. We contribute to the highest and best, the good of our world. Expanding out into that universal presence, we just breathe back our essence into our physical form. Breathing down into your heart, through your body, grounding your feet into the floor, into this Mother Earth, blessing every aspect of it. Just place your hand over your heart if you choose, and just know with me this divine truth, that there is a powerful presence that expresses itself in and through all things, that I am an expression of that power. I am the very emanation of God, of this divine essence. I know that is true for myself. I know it is true for each person with the sound of my voice within this room. And it's from this place of celebration of knowing this truth for us that I claim and know spiritually motivated moral leadership is ours, and we express it in the most beautiful, powerful way, that throughout this coming week, there are opportunities for us to express in that most powerful, beautiful, healing way. This is the truth that I claim for us. I await with excited anticipation